Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tag Talks. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm Georgia Cristea, Tags Events Coordinator, and we are delighted to have this evening with us two architects, not just one, María Sánchez and Pedro Godoy, to present the talk Cayala and the Renaissance of the Human City. In close cooperation with the most regretted, Leon Creer, they conceived and designed Ciudad Cayala in Guatemala City. In an age where cities around the world have become fragmented, anonymous, and often hostile to human life, Ciudad Cayala stands as a living evidence that another path is possible. Conceived as a contemporary classical city, Cayala embodies the moral and aesthetic principles that one gave meaning to urban civilization: beauty, harmony, proportions, and community. Far from a nostalgic imitation, it offers a model for how the city of the future can draw strength from the wisdom of the past. This evening Tag Talk invites you to rediscover the city as a collective work of art, a moral landscape where architecture once again uplifts, dignifies, and connects us to each other. A few words about Pedro Godoy and María Sánchez, Guatemalan architects and co-founders of Estudio Urbano, a practice dedicated to classical architecture and urbanism. Educated both at University of Notre Dame, they have translated timeless architectural principles into contemporary Latin American context, proving that tradition and innovation can coexist to create cities of beauty, dignity, and community. Throughout their work, writing, and teaching, they continue to inspire a global movement towards cities that serve the common good. Their projects stand as evidence that the art of city making, when guided by moral and aesthetic purpose, can once again shape places where life, culture, and hope flourish. As always, the talk will be followed by a question and answers session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please let me know in the message bar at the bottom of the screen, and after the talk I will invite you to unmute your microphone and ask your questions directly. Those said, I will now hand over to Maria and Pablo to begin their presentation. But first, please share your screen.
It is a real pleasure to join you today for this talk. Thank you, Georgia, for inviting us. This is a very special moment for shared ideas, culture, and this civic responsibility that we all have when we are building spaces. So we are honored to share with you a glimpse into our work in Guatemala. And this is a country that is shaped by its extraordinary landscapes and profound cultural memory. Our firm Estudio Urbano is dedicated to the practice, research, and advocacy of traditional architecture and human-centered urbanism. We believe in the enduring relevance of classical principles, particularly those concerning to scale, proportion, and harmony as a foundation of beauty and civic life. Our presentation is divided in two parts. First, I will explore the ideas that guide our work, and then Pedro will show those principles, how those principles built form in the Ciudad Cayalá. Human beings are by nature homo faber, makers of their own world. In the beginning, early humans simply looked for shelter, but then came a pivotal moment. They began to imagine and create things that nature had never directly shown them, like roofs, windows, doors. Reason transformed necessity into form, and form into meaning. That was the true beginning of building, and from building, architecture emerged. It was the moment when humanity moved beyond survival and entered the creative act of giving shape to its surroundings, the moment when culture began to take form in space. These images illustrates the primitive hut, the conceptual model rooted in Vitruvius' writings from the 1st century BC. Vitruvius described the first architectural act. Tree trunks stood upright, became columns, branches laid across them formed the entablature, and when others leaned together, they create a pediment that sheltered man from sun and rain. A century later, Marc-Antoine Laguerre reinterpreted this vision as a philosophical archetype rather than a historical fact, a reminder that architecture originates from nature and reason, from the human impulse to create order, proportion, and beauty. In other words, it is a transformation of necessity into art. So simple construction gives us physical protection. It mediates between man and the environment. But architecture goes further. It gives meaning. It turns building into art. It elevates what is merely useful into something noble, transforming construction into a higher moral purpose, where necessity becomes beauty and form begins to express our values. This is why in architecture, a simple post becomes a proportioned column, a wall becomes a facade that contributes to the life of the street and is not just a barrier, and a roof becomes a pediment that gives hierarchy and presence to the building. So architecture is a coherent language, a language of form and meaning that shapes us and that reveals who we are. And nowhere is this language more evident than in the city. It is essential to understand that architecture and urbanism are one art expressed at different scales, one discipline, one coherent language, simply applied at different magnitudes. As Leon Krier used to say, the city is architecture at the urban scale, and the building is the city at the architectural scale. Seen this way, the city is not just a collection of structures. It is the highest expression of how we choose to live together. Its blocks, streets, and squares give form to the public realm, where community forms, culture grows, and memory takes root. Until the 19th century, architecture and urbanism were about expressing beauty and meaning. Buildings and spaces were meant to be experienced, to elevate daily life, to invite contemplation, and to remind us that the world is a shared home. Traditional cities, shaped slowly across generations, were never experiments. They were refined through continuity. Their proportions, durable materials, and human scale embodied the accumulated wisdom of what allowed people to flourish. They succeed because they respond to our most enduring needs: home for shelter, orientation for clarity, sociability for community, beauty for consolation, and belonging for identity. But in the 20th century, something broke. Cities stopped being places of community and were turned into laboratories of ideology, technical experiments disconnected from human life. Zoning replaced neighborhoods. Function replaced form. Disconnected areas were created, anonymous streets, and a loss of beauty, identity, and meaning. Beauty itself was dismissed as irrelevant. So a culture of ugliness emerged, supposedly practical, but in reality, it was alienating and profoundly inefficient. Speed replaced meaning. A single highway interchange in Atlanta covers more ground than the entire historic center of Florence. And while Florence gave birth to the Renaissance, no overpass will ever change the world. All forms of art reflect this fracture. In these paintings, one is broken, distorted, almost unreadable. The other represents a whole, is calm, unrecognizable. Picasso's fragmented figures mirror the fragmented city. What happened to the body in painting happened to the city in design. Modernism broke the continuity of art by separating what the Vitruvian triad has always united: firmitas, utilitas, and venustas. Efficiency became the only virtue. Beauty was exiled, and with it, our sense of harmony and belonging. As Roger Scruton reminds us, Beauty is not a luxury, it is a moral need. When it disappears, civilization loses its memory. Not only did our surroundings grow uglier, but also our language, our music, and our manners grew louder, more fragmented, and more aggressive. Beauty is the bridge that binds truth, goodness, and meaning. Beauty is timeless. Michelangelo's Pietà shows that beauty reveals meaning even in sorrow. Remind us that life remains intelligibly, dignified, and worth living. For centuries, beauty has been the bridge between truth and goodness, the quiet order that gives meaning to both art and life. Since ancient Greece, philosophers and artists have reflected on its value in poetry, music, architecture, and in life itself, recognizing in beauty one of the essential paths towards truth, harmony, and transcendence. That search for meaning through beauty is what we call patrimony. From ancient civilizations to Rome, Florence, and Antigua, Guatemala, cities had embodied humanity's enduring desire to reconcile the earthly and the divine. Patrimony from patri, father, and monium, that means receive, is not nostalgia. It is a living flame. We are called not to preserve it unchanged, but to protect it and pass it on. As Gustav Mahler said, tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire, to build it to keep that flame alive. Creating patrimony, that is what Ciudad Cayalá represents, is not a repetition of the past, but a continuation of its living essence. Proof that beauty and order can illuminate the places where we live. Creating patrimony, that is what we are doing. That is what Ciudad Cayalá represents, an act of continuity, a renewal of the fire of civilization. It was not conceived to repeat the past, but to continue its living essence, to show that beauty and order can once again illuminate the places that we live. In Guatemala, we have always understood that we build with a lot of responsibility, moral responsibility. We were formed in a tradition that teaches us to honor our landscape and our heritage, to design with gratitude, not with indifference. This image reminds us that calling, the volcanic chain rising above the clouds, shaping not only our territory, but also our imagination and the way we build within it. We are the heirs of two magnificent civilizations, the Maya, whose cities align with the cosmos, making urban order a reflection of celestial harmony, and the Spanish, whose Baroque Antigua Guatemala, that with its plazas, blocks, and streets, and its deep human scale, achieve a profound harmony of architecture, landscape, and human scale. This image shows the Arch of Santa Catalina framing the majestic Agua volcano. It is a perfect symbol of that union, beauty as harmony, beauty as mastery. Both the Mayan and Spanish tradition understood the city not merely as a functional settlement or a machine, but as a moral and symbolic order, a harmony between heaven, earth, and human life. Antigua Guatemala became our essential reference, the basic code of good urbanism, a living lesson in how to build in balance with our climate and our topography and the spirit of the place. From it, we learn not only a language, but a way of life, the integration between public and the private, the human scale that welcomes, the plazas that gather us, and the facades that speaks to the landscape. But as cities evolved, wrong ideas took root. We did not escape of their consequences. This is Guatemala City today, a city shaped by experimentation rather than tradition, where fashion and ideology often overshadows timeless values, and where beauty has been compromised. Guatemala City today bears the marks of sprawl, fragmentation, and a loss of identity. Modern developments too often degrade rather than uplift. They spread across the land in horizontal and vertical monocultures, vast single-purpose zones that consume the space without creating any place. This obsession with utility and with the experimental design has produced urban landscapes that feel ugly, monotonous, and deeply alienating. As cities grew rapidly, they abandoned the principles that once gave them soul. What remains often feels cold and dehumanizing, and people respond instinctively by reaching for poetry, for meaning, for the simple right to be at home. And it was this desire to restore meaning that opened the path to Ciudad Cayalá. When we were given the opportunity to develop this project, we knew it was a rare and precious moment, a chance to put into practice everything we had learned and defended, to show that beauty, order, and human scale are not theories of the past, are not relics. They are tools for building a better future. For over 20 years, Leon Krier worked closely with our team at Estudio Urbano, a rare collaboration built on loyalty, clarity, and shared purpose. We feel deeply blessed to have lived that journey with him. Through our constant dialogue with Pedro, with me, and our team, his urban vision took architectural form. He taught us that true order does not oppress, it protects, and that urbanism, understood as a political art, can help heal a divided society. Leon Krier was more than an architect. He was a humanist, a modern polymath who wove philosophy, politics, art, and architecture into a coherent and courageous vision. Throughout his life, he challenged the dogmas that had reduced the city to a technical object. And he did so without ideology, without noise, and without distraction, only with clarity, precision, and purpose. He understood urbanism as the ancients did, as the noblest forms of politics, the art that orders daily life and allows humans to begin to flourish. For decades, Leon was a brilliant, provocative thinker, a steadfast defender of the traditional city in a world that has largely abandoned it. From the beginning, the intention was clear: to create a place that is beautiful, safe, and welcoming for everyone. A place that becomes part of our collective memory, a shared experience that unites us and strengthens our pride as a nation. And against all odds, it worked. Cayalá succeeded because it spoke to a deep human longing to live in a place that does not humiliate or exclude, but welcomes. A place that does not divide, but shows that living together with order, beauty, and dignity is possible. Not everyone there may own a property, but everybody can belong. A true city is not defined by possession, but by participation. By breaking the rigid rules of the 20th century, urban planning, Cayalá became a place of reconciliation in an historical divided society. Together with Leon, we reactivate a wisdom already inscribed in our own urban history. His vision was not an import, but rereading of universal principles that had long lived here. Cayalá is an open city for an open society, a place where architecture becomes a language that educates, uplifts, and unites. Its streets and plazas invite contemplation. Its proportions and rhythms reaffirm human dignity. It does not imitate a lost past. It reinterprets tradition as a living language capable of expressing beauty today. This is Cayala's legacy, to prove that more human cities are possible, that true modernity means building upon the best of what humanity has already created. A well-made city is not a privilege. It is a fundamental act of civilization. Cayalá is the renaissance of the human city, a living testament that when we build for human dignity, civilization is reborn. So thank you very much. And now let us begin the second part of our presentation with Pedro to discover how this vision took form and why it has inspired hope far beyond our borders. So thank you so much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us. And it is really an honor to be able to present about this project. Now, with all of this background that Maria presented, the idea of creating a new city had to take shape in Guatemala, and we had this opportunity to make it happen. Cayalá is located 4 kilometers to the southeast of the historic center of Guatemala. It is a land that was left without any development for a long time, until the extension of the city really reached the edge of the property. This family owned the land for a long time, and they were even having ideas of how to develop it. In 2003, we convinced them that if anything, they will have to do a new kind of development, something that really became like an extension to the city, a new barrio or new quarter that really fulfills the necessities of the people living there, which was opposite to what they were already planning, was a cluster communities, a section of the city that will become just a collection of cluster communities. And of course, as Maria said, we invited the leading figure, the leading world figure, to help us to create this master plan, Leon Krier. So we did this master plan in 2003 with all the family, and really that was the beginning of them having this vision of all of these principles of traditional architecture and urbanism that should be included. In this charrette, it was established that it should be a collection of quarters running along a ridge of the property. And in these quarters, there will be a main street that connects them all. The actual edge of the property will be the ravine surrounding it. There is several barrios or quarters like Paseo Cayalá, Nogales, Socorro Alto, Socorro Bajo, that comprise this development, and that is about 230 hectares. So the first phase of development, they broke ground in 2009. And we were really anxious because the client really was, I would say, courageous in trying to follow the image. It was not too much about having the perfect numbers, but about getting this concept right. And they allows just, I think, one chance to have this first phase going. So this was actually the inauguration of that first phase with the Azaria building designed by Richard Economakis. It was like a couple of streets, just buildings facing it, part of the main street done, and this public building in it. We were all watching this municipal symphony there, and we discovered something magical has happened. There was an instant memorable place created. In a way, this was not there a year before, and from then on, it just continued to grow. So this was the first success, I think, that, and it was essential into convincing the client for them to continue developing. This is the central quarter. It is Paseo Cayalá is the name, And it has the most important buildings of the area, and really is almost finished in develop. Creating these urban places has proven that if you build it, they come. And actually, this is not only the center of Cayalá, but the center of a complete area of the city. A complete zone of the city refers to Cayalá as the center, at its center. So it has enlivened the complete area. And it's a reference for everyone to live in this zone 16, that is the name. There is, of course, parking that is considered for everybody to be able to arrive, but it is conceived in a way that we can still keep the nice areas for people to enjoy. This is street using concepts of shared space where cars, bikes, people, as the pictures in Maria has shown, makes the place alive, really. And it all happens in the same squares and streets and squares. There is a few aspects that we really emphasize, and now that we have this example and this model done, and I think it's important for some of these ideas to take shape in other projects maybe, and I think it's valuable lesson as we go and put this project into reality, which is important. That the ideals really have to give something up in order to get into reality, but there is some things that you should really keep. The architecture must be traditional architecture. It's a must. We discovered that really is the only way that you can have these coherent streets and squares and that buildings relate one to each other, because it is actually a language. It is actually a language of composition, of architecture. And so different elements can appear, but they are all aligned, like making sentences or making different compositions with different characters and different, but the same, doing this rhythm that walks you along the streets, that allows you to walk along the streets and enjoy. The building facades of the public place define the street squares. Of course, there is a definite sense of place because the facades are actually not the facades of the building, but also the facades of the street. And this is conceived from the very beginning of every building that we conceived and that people have that has helped us was allowed to conceive. And most buildings are urban fabric. This is also important. Most of the buildings that create this environment is really about doing the streets and blocks and creating a whole configuration of the place. And only a few buildings really take the most glorified places and really embellish the most important public places. Building must respond to the urban context as well. This is something important, that a tower in the corner is showing the presence of kind of a gate to the whole development. This is one of the edges of the property to the boulevard, and this is a kind of welcoming you. This building is doing that in a way, and it's because it's taking the precise place in their context. Mix of use, the more the mixes, the better. Of course, this is some of a lesson that, and we are happy that the client really was able to do it, because it is particular to developers nowadays that they just do one type of building. It's just not even just one type of residential. It's just a specific kind of building that they do. And in this case, they proved that it can be done, actually. There's apartment buildings, there is retail, there is churches, there is gathering halls, there is market sheds, there is houses, single-family houses, there is also apartment buildings, and they are all into one single place, creating the streets and squares of Cayalá. Residential buildings should be of a variety of types and sizes. This is referring to also that. Not only the mix of uses, but in the residential that we have different kind of houses, different, allowing more people to be able to afford even the place. Terminated vistas to get into the urban composition and align and give sense of continuity and direction. And the community buildings are the more important than the private. This is in related to the other idea that the urban fabric is what make the general context of the buildings. And the most important building of the community is the church that represents the sacred and spiritual part of the community. This was also an aspect of Cayalá that is very particular. It is not only the client allowing the site in the center of the property and in facing the most important square to be given to the church, but it also is building a church that seems to be a church and actually is breaking the sky and really defining the skyline of Cayalá, showing the importance of the presence of the sacred. As time went through, and this is 2013 or 2014, the client had more need for more density, to allow it to have more density. And with Leon on board on all of this, we developed this concept of small apartment building that becomes like a complete block that is configured in few insulas, and that in a way also configuring the complete urban composition. The block structure, it was established a system of blocks that could keep a standard structural frame. These modules were then used to define streets and squares that were appropriate for the neighborhood. Every 4 to 6 palacitos, which is the name that we give to these small buildings, become an insula with pedestrian streets between them. Corner terraces are allowed so we can control the impact of the height of the buildings into the street. And this is like a study of this area of Lirios, for example, that is having these corner squares and the different heights of buildings that are conceived into an ensemble. Of course, also the parking system of these buildings is important to conceive in order to work to modern standards, and it is with this organic movements that the planning of Leon Krier had, and also having the idea of some different modules that we could use, that was this area was able to be conceived. These are some of the examples that were produced at the beginning of this. It is, you see, higher density, but in the third floor we have these terraces, so the streets don't look as overcrowded, and there's a feeling more of a sense of the street instead of bigger towers. And I think it's really successful, and the model has been reproduced in this whole area of Delirious. These are some of the built examples. You see the church in the background that is relating also to these buildings, and some of the concepts of the little squares between the insulas these are some of the views of the Guatemala City to the foreground. So it is more dense. It is an apartment building type, and it is mixed use, has commercial in the first floor, but it allows you to have higher density of development. There is, like I mentioned, several singular buildings that are considering to the project of the Paseo, and one is the church, the Azaria building. The church is already built. It was designed by Maria and I. The Azaria building by Richard Gonomakis, and the Torre del Mercado, which is yet to be built, but it's already designed, and it will take place in this square next to the boulevard. And so you see how they take precedent into the more important places of the town. This is actually an image of the construction as it is right now. And you can see the different types of buildings. You can read it from the roofs. And the single family to the bottom left of the image, and the more like the palacito types in the middle upper side of the project. And all of them really shaping the main street. And in the main street, these public buildings, that is the Azaria building, and like the Azaria building that is shown here. We have also this aspect of, just to show you, in a way, in this building, we were kind of allowed to do everything that we wanted to shape the building in order to be related to the context, and I think it's an opportunity to share it with all of you. This is the context that we had, the different blocks around the church, and the site for the church that we had. From the beginning, we had this idea of having this trinity of elements: the facade, the bell tower, and the dome, as part of the composition, and this composition being actually related to the urban context in a big way. The dome is an element that is not seen lately in churches, in most of the modern churches. We've taken some character from Antigua Guatemala. As Maria said, also the president of the Spanish colonial in Antigua Guatemala is really strong in our tradition. And so we took it like a part of the ideas of how to conceive buildings out of old buildings, and it is in a way the idea of having the dome of La Merced in Antigua Guatemala reimagined into the proportion and the concept of the new church. This is the initial concept drawings of the building, which is essential to have, and how from the gate of the square you can see the church having these three elements, more like in the shape that we finally made it built. So there is a really direct contact of a singular building, or like a really public building, to the square. Really is becoming like a roof public area, you can say. So this is part of the idea, to have like a really public building, and so how it relates to the square was essential, with all of the elements, of course, of a traditional classical church, but also as it relates to Cayalá, making it unique in the context, and how these three elements are seen from the square and from the street as you approach, and they start to be shown at different times from different distance, and it is really making a relation to the whole context that makes it a stronger and more important building. Of course, the placement of the site and all of the streets arriving to this point is really incredibly done. And I think that this is part of the magic that Leon was able to conceive in this plan. And but the views to this and how to address them, it was important to this building to take all of this into consideration. So this is a model of the context and the square and of the church, the different elements of composition that come into place. And so it is really incredible that we were able to do this. We were really fortunate to being able to do it, and to have this again, these typologies coming together into the building of the church, and how it was represented from history and the tradition of the tolos and to commemorate, and the basilica, and all of them coming together into creating this building. The proportions of how it was conceived and the relation from the parts to the whole, and in this particular building, that being the most important building should have the more classical building and the most refined building. So it was kind of the challenge to do it, doing presence from antiquity, the Arco de Tito in Rome, or the San Andrea in Mantua of Alberti, that gives the sense of a triumphal arch in the entrance and the facade as a triumphal arch of the gates of heaven to the church. And so, as it relates to the parts in the plan as well. Of course, the relation of the square to the church was also essential. As you saw in some images of Maria, you see actually the tabernacle from the square. And this is really particular because it's like the square is designed to really have this building as part of it, and really blessing the square of Cayalá, you can say. And how it actually the facade is sized so you can actually see the dome from the square. And so you see, we come back to Antigua as well, and showing that doing the concepts of Antigua, following a tradition of the people that built Antigua, in a way is what we should do. You can say the Valley of Antigua wouldn't be as good as it is if it were not for Antigua that happened. And this is I think a message for architecture and urbanism. We should build as if the projects that we do actually improve the nature around it and become unique places to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. That was fantastic. I always admire your project, and I think it's so inspiring and necessary as a beam of hope in this world where beauty tends to gradually diminish. And also, I think we tend to forget that creating the future heritage is maybe as important as preserving the existing heritage. So heritage is not to be put in a museum. It has to be keep alive in itself. It's intangible term to create on and on. Otherwise, we will remain without heritage at the moment. So we will now begin our question and answer session. And if you have any question, please let me know in the question bar below and unmute your microphone and ask the questions directly. Any questions? until you gather your thoughts, I will start with a question of my own. I think Cayala sometimes is compared as type of development with Avenida Escazú in San Jose, in Costa Rica. But of course, it's very different. How do you think your being traditional compared to the other one, which is more modernistic? What are the elements that you think are the strong points? And did they manage to captivate the public in a better way?
Actually, I'm not particularly familiar with that project, but I would say that in the case of Cayala, it really made a difference of people really wanting to enjoy the place. Is something that a place that you want to visit and spend your Sundays and walk around. Even you cannot live there. Probably you cannot afford to have an apartment there, but still you go there to enjoy the place. This is something that is not done just by Guatemala people, but also El Salvador. There is buses of El Salvador coming to Guatemala City, and actually enjoying the place, which was mostly people going to Antigua. But now there is this place that is visited, and I think that that's kind of a testament of that people really enjoy it, and really is like Ruben Hansen said, that people vote with their feet, right? And wherever they go is in a way showing the support, and that we did something that they like.
And also, I think I saw one image of that project, and of course, the really real difference is in the architecture that we are speaking about. Our architecture is rooted in our tradition. So, for example, in the image that you can see right now, if you see the capitals, there are capitals of maize capitals. So this was an allegory of Richard thinking about our sacred Mayan book, the Popol Vuh, that we were men made of corn. So in Cayala, we have so many symbols, so many details that really rooted our design for our traditions. So that is what makes Cayala, I think, special being in Guatemala.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oscar has a question.
Hello, thank you. Congratulations on this super successful project from Poland. I am an architect from Poland. I would have one question or two. What was the public-private proportion of the investment? Like, was all the area public from the beginning, or was it more or less private?
Actually, that's an important aspect of this. It is completely private. Actually, they have a whole institution behind it. Right now, they have their own water system and drainage and trash collection, and also the building of the streets, the security, the cameras. In a way, it's kind of its own municipality working in the private. I would say, as of now, is like a private city. So all of the development was done by the private, and they are. It was really a bet in the future, I think, because they kept all of the buildings that you see flanking this main street are actually part of the company and of the family. So they kept this first layer of buildings, and then they sell the houses and the apartment buildings behind it, and those are for sale. And in time, I think they are really happy of how it turned out, because it was really a big risk, I would say, but also the parking that is kind of a success as well, because they charge for the parking, and of course a lot of people wanting to come and visit, and so it's kind of also kind of the business of the place. So I think that it is a really particular project that has been developed all in the private.
So was the client convinced to traditional architecture and urbanism from the very beginning, or did you need to convince him that this is the best way to do it?
Yes, it was a process that in which we present the idea of a traditional town from the beginning, and of course it took time for them to organize and to start this project. It took almost 7 years, because as Pedro mentioned in his presentation, they were just doing like high-end housing, but inside of walls. So the whole area was not developing well. And when we came to Guatemala after doing our master's degree at Notre Dame, we were with this spirit of doing something really extraordinary, like leading something to give pride to our country. So I think it was the moment in which they really wanted to do something else, and we were there. So was a combination in time, like a process for them to understand what a traditional city was, and they had the courage to really go through against everybody. We were really fighting against everything, because of course we had the past 100 years in Guatemala city, we have the modernist model. So every single aspect of this design was a challenge for everybody. So I will tell you a little story that I always remember, and that we were in a social meeting, nothing to do with Cayalá, and there was a great entrepreneur of Guatemala, and he said to me, we were very young, and he said to me, your project is going to be a failure. I will never be, my business are not never going to be in that project. Now ask me where he is right now. He is in front of the main plaza. So that's the thing, that when you know that something is approaching you to the truth, you can see the continuity of thousands of years of this kind of development. You know what you are doing, then you cannot stop. You have to fight, and we've had so many fights doing this project. This is amazing. We can write a book, but the good thing is that the client was convinced of doing it and risking everything, because as Pedro mentioned, the Azaria building is a civic building. Normally you don't do a public building in the first phase. You will do just housing. But he dared to do it, and the result was magnificent. You saw it in the concert that Pedro showed, that image. The place just have this sense of being there for a long time ago. So I think that it was a process of learning with the client.
Right.
It has to do also with this concept that Maria presented about patrimony and legacy, I would say, because the client really was into it I mean, from the first charrette, I would think they had the feeling that they had something in hands that was different, and they were willing to give it a try, I would say. And they were successful in that. A regular developer, I mean, all of their peers were really saying, are you crazy? You don't have to do this. You are going to fail. Yes, it is something that nobody believed it could be successful. Now, everybody wants to be close to Cayalá. The value of the land it has grown tremendously, and of course they are able to develop now. They can develop more houses and more apartments that gives them more profit, and it's because they created this center.
And imagine the value for them, because now it's one of the most visited places, not just in the city, but in the country, and it's a destination. So they really changed the rules of how to build in Guatemala.
It's great to hear it. I would like to have another question. If we talk about the architects, local architects, like modernist one, have they been against the project?
Oh, yes. Yes, that we have. I mean, people love it if they are not architects. Because they start to say, is not is a false historic. It is not really traditional. It cannot be. I mean, they really suffer. I don't know why. There was a time when a professor from the schools around came and said, please show us Cayalá. And we, okay, of course, we can show you Cayalá and bring your students. And it was like 20 of their students, and we walk around. And suddenly the professor turned and said, okay, look at the urban place, not at the architecture. It has nothing to do with the place. So just the urban, and we will talk about it later, right? So it was like really not making sense of it, of the complete thing, right? They resisted. Now you can see some walking in the Sundays there because it's really the kids want to go there. I mean, it's nice.
No, and there is always this misconception that urbanism and architecture are two disciplines. And that is not like that. As I explained, it is one art. It's just managing different scales, but it's the same language, and this is very important because we had in some interviews the question that can you keep the urbanism and do a different architecture? But that doesn't work like that. So it's one art, and it should be consistent and coherent.
Definitely.
I would like to add something if it wasn't very clear that you not only challenge the style, proposing traditional, but you also challenge the type of security in the city. So you practically change from the gated communities to one which allowed the community to enter. And this was also very revolutionary and a risk, a very big risk, probably in the beginning considered. We have another question from Laura. But if you want to say something, Maria, about what I just said, please.
Yes, you know that all cities around the world has their own insecurities, and we have to fight with that problem. But, here in Guatemala, Antigua Guatemala was like 1 hour from the city, and it's not just surrounded by walls. So we had visible example that we really can do an open city. And that was a real challenge because, of course, some security advisors told us that it was better to enclose the city, but that was, I think, one of the biggest fights that our team wanted to achieve, because this changed completely the perception of what is Guatemala. Like if you just read news and bad news, you will have the wrong idea of what the place is, and this happens everywhere in the world. So I think that we have to fight for this in every single country. We have to really fight for beauty, for order, for everyone to be allowed to have a better life. And if we enclose ourselves inside walls, we are giving the streets to nobody. So we are creating more violence, and we are creating more disintegration between communities. So we have to think about it. And I think that Cayalá is, as you say, it really shows that it can work.
Thank you. Laura, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's a very inspiring example of urbanism. Perhaps not your responsibility as the architects, but I'd be interested if there was any discussions with the city government about how, given you were saying that land values are increasing, that's on the one hand really positive, but at the same time, how can you protect the city from becoming a site for speculation and pricing out the people that were already living there?
So all of the development is controlled by them. Also, the marketing of every single project that comes out of Cayalá is controlled. And actually, this area of the Paseo, which is the most important quarter, you say, it's almost finished, but they have one in the vicinity that they are also developing. So actually, it's up to them how they control, and actually, it's up to the market, I would say, to control the prices, not the municipality. That we think that the success created this problem of the prices being too expensive, which in a way creates apartments that are less affordable for many people. That is something of a problem, I would say, in order to have one of these projects. But I think the example remains that if this was the way of working, of way of doing new projects, new developments, you will get more variety in prices as well. And even if they improve in different areas of the city, it can be use these same principles and improve the lives of people around it. The mayor did say at some meeting we had that he wanted to implement the Cayalá effect. He said, we want to do the Cayalá effect in other parts of the city. And we have not seen an example yet, but I think it's probably on its way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Howard. Howard, please.
Yes, can you hear? Yes, you probably can hear me.
Yes.
It's a sort of follow-on question from the two previous questions, really. And given that this is an entirely private project, I'm curious. It seems in parts quite a high density. There are quite high rise buildings and so on. I mean, I don't know the ancient city, it's Antigua, Guatemala, but that looks much lower density. So I wondered, what was that the architect's choice, or was that coming from the landowners who wanted to maximize what they were doing? It's a sort of follow-on question from the other two, really.
Yes. Actually, what you see in this picture was supposed to be the whole master plan in about densities, 3 stories, and I think all of the Main Street remained to be like that. It's only after this that the client had the pressure to put more density into the development. So the original master plan was to be done in three stories. Then we devised this idea of having the palacitos that is more density coming into the project. Still, I think it is kind of successful how it was integrated. And more than that can be problematic.
Yes, and that is something that also comes with successful projects, that they can be self-poison, like, because it is so much the success that then you ask, when is enough? So the only thing that we really want is not to go up and up.
So yes, and you will get to see, I mean, we didn't show it this presentation, but there is this new quarter that pushed it a little bit more to the limit. And we were still involved into doing it with a master plan with Leon, but it was pushed to have more density. So the device was to do this a little bit higher points in some of the buildings. But so you see, this is one of the problems now that we are struggling in a way to keep it into the right density.
It's, in a way, as you say, it's a product of your success, really, because it's a brilliant project. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oscar, another question.
Yes, yes, it's just a small question. Why is everything white? Most of the walls, is it typical in Guatemala, or was it like a decision for this project specifically? It looks very good. I mean, it's perfect, but I'm just curious, you know?
Actually, it was like it used to be. In a way, Antigua Guatemala was all white, and the new Guatemala City was all white. So this was an idea of Leon, and this is how we started. I think all white, and it's wonderful. I think it
Yes,
really
yes, it's
makes.
perfect.
I think, and also we already studied the colors, the possible colors that the buildings could probably have, and we did a palette with Leon about this. But nobody shares to be the first one to paint, so I think it will stay white for a time, for a long time. Yes,
Okay.
but colors, it's like when you do a product, it's like there are things that comes with time. There are things that matures with time. So colors should be like that, mature with time, not just like apply a palette of color that is I don't know, like not rush on those issues.
Still, you see Carmona in Spain that is completely white, and it's wonderful. So we
Yes.
can hope to have it in white.
So you are open to the idea that the buildings can be different color in time, that they can paint, or you can give them a code of colors that they can use, or how
Yes,
do
no. We already studied the palette of colors that could probably happen, but I don't think I think nobody wants to paint, so it's good. I like it white.
you see? Frederick has a very interesting question. Would you like to unmute your microphone, please?
Hello. Thank you very much. It's absolutely fascinating, this project and a phenomenal achievement.
Thank you.
We have a long discussion here about architecture, and where I live, there is lots and lots of house building going on, and the design is being set by large house builders and not the individual. Do you think it is the case that residents are happy and to pay more to live in beautiful buildings, or is it just the amenities and the community that perhaps you are maybe creating that it is more attractive? That's the sort of first avenue of questions.
Okay, I will say that, of course, when you live in a place that gives you this level of dignity, you will pay more to be there. And it has been a matter of balance, like balance everything, because of course, as Pedro said, it became so successful that the prices are now up. So of course, people would love to live in Cayala, but something happened in the process, and is that because the Embassy of the United States moved near the project, everything also raised up. And now we have a lot of people of the embassy living in Cayala. So it's not just about the physical aspect of the city, but how does the market move? So the embassy changed completely the game on selling the properties and buying the properties and renting the properties.
And so far, I think the houses that are done already, it seems to be that they are going to be the only houses they have because of this pressure of the density. And so I would say they are the lucky ones because the single family homes are really into this quarter. And in the next, I think in Socorro, maybe we have some of that, which is a quarter nearby, but it is finished. You can say the properties for houses.
And that's a pity. Yeah.
Yeah, first.
Thank you. I think you have a second section of your question, Frederick.
I do, thank you. Again, I can only assume it's similar everywhere else in the world. post-COVID. Lots of people are now working much more at home with Zoom meetings and hot desking and so on and so on. That also has implications for family life and the way people want to live and move around the spaces that are their homes. So that's the first element, but also in and around the development using sort of autonomous vehicles and things like that. Did you consider those two elements a lot when you were designing the space?
Well, COVID took us for surprise as well. But Cayalá proved to have really something special about it, because immediately it was forbidden everybody to work in the streets and inside the commercial areas. So it turned out to everybody being in canvas in the streets and having parked cars driving by and getting their products from the retail that was on selling on the street. And that is just one aspect of this main street that was fabulous, I think. And of course, the people living in Cayalá benefited a lot from it, because they were having this walking distance access to all of this. So it is really the traditional town that allowed it to be. I mean, they were kind of privileged, because otherwise you will be surrounded by these highways that you cannot walk, or instead they were really in this oasis, I would say, that they can live there in their home and still having access to all of that. That's just in the crisis, but after, of course, now, if you live in Cayalá, you walk to all of these cafes, restaurants, and you can work from there perfectly and have your life without using the car. Actually, we have a family, that young couple that just married, had a child, and they live there. They really don't use the car. I mean, they go to the school for the kinder walking, and the supermarket walking, and so it's really a change of life, of way of life, that most of people is not allowing to have anymore.
And even our kids, sometimes they said, "Oh, mommy, I will go to work to Cayalá." I'm like, why don't you work from here? But they love it. They have this environment that is so alive, and I think that is a part of a necessity as human beings, that we need that social aspect. So even if after pandemic things change, I think that the sociability of our societies are not going to change. We need each other. So to create spaces like that, like this one, is important. And also to mention that in pandemic, all the social places for young people that we had were malls, and the malls were closed. So imagine that in Cayalá they have another opportunity of having this social life and to see the life in a real town. So that also changed completely all the dynamic in our city.
And are the internal courtyard of the Palazzetto used for relaxation? They are like a small private courtyard?
Yes, they're a small. They are open. Actually, there is no enclosure of this.
You can go even as a public person to cross through them.
You can go through them and see these little courts. They are small, but I think they add some green to the apartments, and it's nice, little squares.
Yes. Anthony has a question. Would you like to ask it, please?
Hello, thank you very much indeed. First of all, thank you for your presentation and for this amazing piece of your contribution to urbanism.
Yeah.
The taller buildings which you showed look, those of us in Europe, much more European than the low rise of Guatemala. We in Europe now seem to be completely polarized between suburban development, particularly in England, but in other European countries as well, of very low-rise individual houses, extremely uncommunity, where you turn your back on your neighbors, and in town, high-rise with godless and peopleless, windy spaces between them. It's amusing you talk about the American embassy, because we have a new American embassy in London, which several of your viewers, I suspect, will have seen on this lecture, which is just a series of completely dehumanized tower blocks. And how do you see, therefore, this amazing contribution you've made influencing, reinvigorating, recolonizing, if you like, European urbanism?
I think that, first of all, the first thing that should happen is to have good clients that really believe on this side of the story, because it's impossible. Even if we as designers want something, if we don't have the right client, this is not going to happen. So for us, it's important that developers and owners of land learn from this and see that this is also profitable, because making beauty is also making economy. I cannot tell you how much the price of this land was when we started and how it is now. So if you build right with the right concepts of all the historical centers that we have seen around our world that are completely successful, everybody wants to be there. This is a process in which we are, and I think that we are lucky to live in this moment in our civilization, because we have to wake up this call for everybody. It's not impossible. It's so possible, and it's so truthful with our identity as human beings. So, and we are in a good moment, I would say. But it's important to have this side of having clients and developers educated on this in a more economical way, let's say.
Yes, I think Maria is right on the point. I think the conception of a project as for a developer of being just a way to make money fast is a conception that has to change, and not change just by because you want to rule it, but because it really makes sense. It is actually running like a mice in these round things, and it's just like creating money, but then you don't have to where to spend it, and then you have to go to the next project, and then you don't really create patrimony of companies of development. They have been doing this for I don't know how many years, but to realize that you can actually stay and create a project that lasts, and buildings that are not being to be demolished in 20 years, and to create that vision and having profit and value from that, it really will change the view of how developers react and do beautiful, more permanent places.
Yeah, it's a matter of legacy. And there is an ancient knowledge about building for the seventh generation. We are not thinking about this anymore. We are just building and building and building without really thinking on what we are going to leave to the next generations. So we have to be honorable, moral, and that we receive something that was a treasure, and we have to continue that treasure. So we have to collectively think again on how we are building our world.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, let's hope. We have, of course, in England, Poundbury, which the man who is king had done. But I mean, I was I was nearly still a student in those days, so it's an incredibly slow process, this development.
Oh, yes.
But you've added to the impetus, and let's hope people take it up. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Yes.
We have now in England many similar to Poundbury, but with the lesson learned. So it's much more variety of type of affordability. Probably Robert, if it's still here, he can tell us about coding and how you can develop a really healthy new urban development. But until then, we have a question from Neil McAllister. Would you like to ask it?
Hello. Yeah, part of what makes a lot of these traditional places have the character they have is because they've evolved over time. Obviously, with this, you're building a whole lot at once and doing it very well. But just wondering how you see it being able to develop in the future. Is there scope for it to change and evolve as different owners want to do different things to their property, or is it fairly frozen in time? How do you see it evolving into the future?
Oh, no, you know that our client is so enthusiastic with all that the process that we have had in 20 years that he already is giving us another piece of land to develop another town. So that is wonderful, because he is a client that now he is completely convinced on the power of a master plan and a power of like the result of this. So that is a progress that they really want to continue this evolution and this sense of pride for our nation and of course for their family. They are now like town founders. So I think that there is so much hope, and we have to keep the hope. We are the generation we are the fighters, and we have to really fight for this future as much as we can.
And if you are referring also to particular buildings, like if you have a house to enlarge it and like that, there is like a committee to protect in a way how you interact with the context. Of course, this is something that has to happen because in order to have some control on the like streetscapes, right? And but you can propose to enlarge whatever building you have, especially the house, right?
Okay, thank you.
Robert, would you like to compare a bit with what Create Streets is doing? Your work on Create Streets with Cayala? Are there similarities? Are there differences?
Well, yeah, firstly, hello. I'm Robert Kwolek. I work at Create Streets. I might have met some of you at the Inbound conference.
Hello.
I mean, you'd mentioned earlier the work that we do on design coding, and I'd say that's still kind of a theory at this point how it would work, because the way that design coding is meant to work in the UK is that by coding for higher quality, so for example, a bit of ornament or better materials, it should in theory take the value out of the land. So even though the construction costs might be higher, for example, if you talk to a builder that's built Poundbury, they'll tell you that the houses are about 15 to 20% more expensive to construct than a typical house that one of the big house builders would do. But the sale price shouldn't be higher, or at least not much higher, because it just means that the developer can pay less for the land. Now, I say this is theory because most of the design codes that we've been working on and others have been working on are still too new to test it. So we might have to wait another year or two until the design codes get adopted and implemented and enforced properly, and before developers can start buying land. So yeah, I think that's really the main point. Sort of TBD. We'll wait and see.
Okay.
Thank you. Another
Thank
question
you.
from Oscar, which is extremely dynamic.
Yes, I'm sorry for my dynamics.
No,
Just
it's perfect. It's
I'm just
perfect.
very curious. What was the construction methods? Because was it like fully traditional, like stone only, or brick, and plaster and stucco, or was it like concrete and mixed, with the exterior traditional cladding?
Yes, it is actually concrete frames. All of the buildings are concrete frames and concrete blocks. Of course, doing shaping the facades and all of that. Yes, that is something still a battle still to won, to be won. But it actually makes sense, and I think it can be the next step into creating projects that actually is a more permanent construction, as we know, and it can be the future. There is just, of course, too many battles to really achieve the perfection. But we'll still have to go into that, I think.
Yeah, lexically and typologically, we are right. So we're in that process.
And even in the detailing, sometimes the constructor didn't get it perfect or they didn't get it right, and I think it's a process, but it makes it real, the project. As you walk along the street, you will get to see some aspects of it that it's here and there, but it is actually part of the making a real project, I think. And so we're happy with it, even that.
Oh, yes. And remember that this is the first traditional project after so many years. So it was a challenge for everybody, for the constructors, for the people that were building it. Like it was really a challenge. And I think that we are really happy with the result. There was like a strategy for us that was to keep all details to the minimum, but right. So it was like a most successful process. And that is something that we will recommend. As Pedro mentioned in his presentation, just the most important buildings were the ones that were more canonical. So that relieves the pressure on the other buildings to be very simple, very vernacular, and also gives the right dose and balance for hierarchy and in the ornaments and the character of each building.
Well, and also in the process, I think that one aspect that should be noticed always is that the craftsmen really enjoy doing this kind of buildings.
Oh, yes.
I mean, they feel proud of being able to do a cornice, and it is something that is not asked for lately. And so they were being part of something bigger and creating a special buildings. And this is the feeling, not just construction and more square meters of walls and windows, but actually the molding and the bases of the columns and the wooden pillars and this making sense of a real construction. This is something aspect that is interesting that you won't notice, and you won't know, but actually the craftsmen really were proud.
No, and it's beautiful because they were taking their families on the weekends to show them their work. So that was really amazing. I think that is great.
Yes, that's fantastic to help craftsmen thrive and also to regain the pride, because this is something that was lost. A good craftsman, it's not so much respected as it was before. And from here we have all those problems that they don't want to follow such a career. And at least in UK, you have this option. If you are not so good in school, then you probably will go to do some building works, which is totally wrong. You must be smart, talented, gifted to do good architecture.
Of course.
Yes. And another remark from Anthony, who's asking about the costs of construction. And I would like to ask also, what's the seismical regime in Guatemala? Can you do high-rise building on traditional methods, or it's a bit risky from the seismic? I don't know how big is the.
Yes, it is. It is really a highly active area for earthquakes, you would say. All of Guatemala is. This is something that has the codes of construction, like, of course, very strict, and so it's kind of a problem. But in doing high rise with traditional construction, but of course you see the historic buildings that are still standing in the center of Guatemala that are 3 to 4 stories of traditional construction still standing, and it's
Up to
it's
4
fine.
stories, it's safe. But you had 7, 8, I saw in the plan.
Those
Some of
are,
them.
yes, like I was saying, these are all concrete frame structures, right? And so that's how, and also we have parking below, and so it's kind of
It's much
the
bigger.
way it managed to happen.
Yes, Anthony.
So
I think you've answered I mean, your financial and your geological situation is very different from here in Europe. The pressure, of course, for most of us, all of us, is speed, because time is money for developers and for developers of any project. And they take, I find very often, especially now as more and more is determined by financial directors, a rather short-term view, so that they're prepared to spend to forget the long-term economies of traditional construction. But I accept that in the world of earthquakes, traditional construction in our European understanding is not necessarily a possibility. I loved your comment about the families. It's so true. When a job is finished and they bring their wives and girlfriends and children, it's to me a real joy.
It's amazing.
yes,
this is something you've been able to contribute to, and that will infect the children to want to do what their father does. And there is, I think, here, and I also have a world in France, in the last 10 years, a real desire to re-engage with traditional trades and something that is with the feet in the earth, as it were. So I think all is not lost, but
no, we have to fight. I think that's what I mean, that we have to see ourselves in a very amazing position to be fighters, to defend what is right, and not to give up. If you see what humanity has built from the Greeks to the 19th century, we have even built 10 times more from the 20th century to the 21st century in a very bad way. But we have to keep the hope, and we have to create more, like, even if we cannot fix it all, because it's going to be really hard, but we can create this oasis of beauty, and that will change with time the situation. So we have to fight, and we have to give coherence to our next generations. Is our duty, is our moral duty. So we have to fight, and I'm glad that we are fighters. Yes.
And people want to keep what you create. I mean, living in London, I'm now of an age, which you can see in the video, that there are sites in the centre of London where I've now seen the third building constructed in my lifetime on the same site. And so the buildings of the last century will not be here in 100 years' time. And the buildings from the Greeks to the 19th century will still be here. And God willing, your buildings will still be here too.
We hope so. We hope so. Yes, yes.
Yes, practically it's said that the beauty of a building, it's a marker of its longevity. If it's ugly, it will disappear anyway. But if it's beautiful, it will be kept. eventually transformed, and it will not die. Any
Yes,
other questions?
and having this idea of having this virtuous cycle, because it really makes sense. And of course, we were convinced with all of these ideas of tradition, but when you start to add up really all of the sense that makes to building a traditional building, a traditional city, a traditional town, a tradition, it really makes, like you say, buildings are not going to be destroyed, and the waste that is controlled because they don't destroy it. And also people is moving less in cars, so it is better for the environment. And so everything is so perfect, and is tradition have, I mean, man already discovered all of this, like from ancient times, right? And the Renaissance.
And when you do something like solid, beautiful, look at the Pantheon in Rome. It has like 9 million of visitors every single year. Imagine how this building contributes to its town. So if we really focus on doing beauty and doing like permanence, our towns are going to survive for a long time. So we have to change that aspect of our civilization today, that everything should be just about economy and money and velocity, and to, like, in a way, indifferent with our environment and the future of the next generations.
Yes, I think, Cayala, it's really an example that, as you said, when you build with purpose, you can transcend some material values. It adds another layer of value, education for the people, and also aiming for something better, something more beautiful. And the children, I think, they are most affected, because once you have the opportunity to grow up in such an urban space, your standards of quality will be different. So even if now they are poor, they will know why to fight, why to learn, why to...
What do they want in life?
Exactly. They will have an example of what to aim for. Yes. And if there aren't other questions, I would like also to end in with the idea that it's not only the architecture that we have to preserve, but also the memory of the visionary person who had somehow the clear vision of showing us the right path, as Leon Krier was, because his lightness and continuous strive for beauty and truth, it's much wider than probably even him imagined at the beginning of his career. And you had the privilege of working and knowing him so well, and
oh yes, it was a blessing. Yes,
for all of us.
Oh yes,
thank you.
And it's also a testament of how how much you can fight for what you think is truth, because he really started in a time that everybody was against him, and he was with this clear idea of what he had to do, and idealistic idea of this is what is needed to repair the world. And so it really, in his work, is creating a model for the future.
And he didn't become bitter. He became more light and more light. He was of a generosity.
Oh, yes.
Yes, but his personality was also the same as his thinking, you know, the way he dressed with so much respect for himself and from others, the way he talked, the way he conveyed different opinions. So that was also part of the beauty that he has inside. And he shows his internal beauty, and then the beauty that we have to produce to the world in order to have a better civilization. So it's a great human being, and we should really study him in all different aspects that he contribute to our societies.
Yes, a true example, and we miss him dearly.
Yes.
Any other questions, or we can conclude our talk this evening? If no one wants to ask anything, I would like to thank you so much, both of you, Maria and Pablo, for this absolutely amazing talk. And to thank you all for joining us online this evening. And I would like to say that this is the last TAG Talk of 2025, because our next event will be a live one, the TAG Awards, on the 4th of December at the Art Workers Guild. And there are still a few days to submit your entries if you haven't done it as such, until 17th of November. We will restart the talks in January, and I already have a very interesting list of speakers aligned, so watch this space, our social media channels for more details, and please join us again in January. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you all. Thank you, Maria and Pedro, and I wish you a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.